We all have an adversarial force within us, which is kind of like an evolutionary agent. And this force inside us tries to prevent us from awakening fully, from reaching our true potential, and from showing up in a way that is powerful and awake. The greater perspective, the way that God, the way the creation is moving through this whole process, AI is part of it all. And clearly we have to interact with this separate intelligence that's emerging right now, that we sort of created, that we're interacting with, and through our interactions it grows in complexity. And with it, like everything else, it brings the possibility of ruin, of just degeneration.
Hello, all beautiful people all over this amazing planet. This is another Beyond the Courage podcast. My name is Robert Canis, and today we have a superbly amazing guest, author of the most astonishing animations, short films, especially Modern Odyssey in the Shadow. For me, this is really the best and absolutely the most amazing short film animation I've seen in my life. Our guest today is Lubomir Arsov, author and creator of this beautiful masterpiece and also many other films and animations. How are you doing, Lubomir, today?
I'm doing well, Robert. Thank you for having me, and thanks for that very, very nice introduction.
Beyond the Courage is a creation. Our goal is to celebrate life, to appreciate life, and also we are celebrating our guest. And today we would like to have a beautiful, amazing conversation with you, Lubomir. And would you be so kind and introduce yourself to our guest and viewers?
Absolutely, yes. I'm an artist and storyteller. I work with animation, and I'm quite interested, involved in, and basically this journey that many of us are undertaking right now of knowing ourselves, knowing the world that we're in, beyond the prescribed reality tunnels that we've been used to. And as all of these regular narratives crumble and new ones emerge, I tried my best to put all that I realize, all that I know, all that I see, my insights when they feel real, into my art. And there's a certain sense of duty and also a sense of fulfillment in expressing all of that through art.
Okay. I have a question for you, which is probably quite a challenge. Do you think that life is logical and rational?
Interesting. I like that we're starting with this question. That's good. Yeah, we're going in the deep end. Is life logical or rational? Well, life, as I see it, has various layers, and our consciousness perceives and acts on various layers. So I think it depends on that level of consciousness that we're interacting with. So life in general, logic and reason, I believe maybe this is similar, but I believe and know that reality functions according to a set of laws and principles, and that there is absolutely within it a certain order that is that's where the divine hierarchies and the hierarchies of creation and the various fields of consciousness interact to not only create but also to maintain, sustain this reality, and then also to destroy elements of it when needed so that new ones can be made. So logic and reason, I think, fit within that, but the human logic and reason are quite limited, quite feeble in making sense of everything, making sense of reality. So from a human perspective, I would say no, reason and logic. I don't know that they make up reality. They're just tools to make sense of the chaos. In a greater scheme of things, I do feel there are laws, and if we could call those logic, then yes. Yeah,
thank you for this beautiful answer. I found the information that it took you 4 years to write a script for modern Odyssey, for In Shadow. The animation itself is 13 minutes long. How did you find that inner strength and that patientness to spend that much time of producing such a beautiful masterpiece?
Yeah, so it actually, to write it didn't take me that long.
Mm-hmm.
But to make it took me about 3 years on and off. A lot of it was waiting for some of my collaborators to do their parts because we had no budget. So it was a labor of love, and I'm very grateful for everyone involved in it. It was 2 other guys basically helping me with it who believed in the project. And the reason, like how I got through it was, so there are 2 things. One, it felt like the art piece was, there was a certain mission and a duty to make it. So it was of service. So that was a calling that was greater than me, which inspired enough energy and conviction and discipline to carry through with it. The other aspect was, it was a piece which was clearing and purifying me and my own journey through the darker underworld of myself and the collective. And as I had been exploring that for many years, the piece itself, In Shadow, served as a catalyst for clearing away these everything that I had been moving through. So it was a personal transforming tool, in addition to a tool for collective service for the process that we were moving through, and I was seeing and anticipating that it would accelerate at that point. So those 2 together gave me enough energy to continue to keep coming back to it, to quit my job and work on it, to believe in it when I didn't even know what it was going to be like. I had a sense and a feeling and a vision of what it was going to be and what I wanted to present, but there was no real precedent to it. Some of the inspiration for the film stylistically were films like Koyana Squatsi, Baraka, and these are films which are very cinematic. They have no dialogue, but they just have a cinematic score, and they survey cinematically various parts of our human existence and nature. And something about just the camera looking at certain situations and moving through them in the world, and the way that created a space of being very reflective and contemplative for the audience, really inspired me to do the same thing through what In Shadows shows, so that we could not mince words, not confuse anything with words or any certain perspective, but allow the viewer to just go on the journey of these images.
Mm-hmm. I have for the most of my life, I've seen everywhere the life showing me this information. Open your eyes. Open your eyes. I see it almost everywhere, and I think that the deeper message of your art, there is also this message, like to humanity, to go away from the shadow and move into the light. Especially your second amazing animation, The Kingdom, which is also superbly beautiful and touchy, and I was literally crying when I was watching it. There is way more light in it than in the shadow. How can we open those eyes? How can collective consciousness of humanity live a better, more holistic life?
Mm-hmm. That's interesting that you've been seeing these signs and invitations, I suppose, of opening one's eyes. And you're right, actually, when you put it that way, it's very true. The impulse behind both In Shadow and Kingdom are largely, almost exclusively, about opening our eyes. The real eye of seeing beyond the appearance and understanding, and then from understanding to knowing. So seeing, understanding, knowing. There's something within me personally that, I of course still live, as we all do, under many many illusions and many different layers of this reality, this matrix. So we're all in different layers of liberation, because it's it's a game. As I'm learning, the more we move through it, the more we approach it with humility of, the sense of I am open to knowing more, and I am also aware that I am in not knowing. The more we see that there's just like a vastness, more and more emerging as so yes, opening the eyes, awakening, and really seeing, to me, is important, because there's I suppose there's a real sense of dignity and seeing clearly and living with what is actually in front of us. Something about illusions, something about delusions and artifice and fake imagery I just find it offensive on very many layers, and to such a degree that I've committed to making these films and releasing them and putting all the effort in, because it's almost like I can't quite put it into words, and I could give it words, but I'm trying to be as honest as I can in the impulse I'm feeling right now of what is it that makes me do so. And I think it's just a deep impulse of wanting all of us to level set on some sort of reality basis and move beyond just patterns of harm for ourselves, for the people around us, and for this whole situation that we find ourselves in this earth, in this existence. And so to move beyond tired old suffering and patterns, and just kind of saying enough, because I think it's a waste of time, and there's so much more to do and to discover, to play with here. And also, as I'm feeling into this now, there's something about the forces which are aware of putting up illusions and of deceiving humans. I have, when I really feel into it, I know their function and I understand part of what they do and why they're here, but within me there's a great indignation and great anger, a righteous anger that comes toward that force, and a desire to clear it, the way that a magician will put their staff down, the way that Gandalf puts his staff down and said, "Thou shalt not pass." There's some of that energy in me to really put the staff down and clear all illusions, because they're pests. So I was really feeling into my body here, trying to give you a very fresh answer to your beautiful question.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. When I was preparing to this podcast, to the conversation with you, just recently, yesterday, I found this amazing conversation with Audrey Marcus. It's a pretty long conversation, amazing conversation. Like I haven't watched all of it, because it was yesterday. I was making a lot of notes. I got maybe to like 1 hour, and I gotta admit that it's such a beautiful conversation between two very mature men. The level of complexity and comprehensiveness, the way you communicate, it's absolutely astonishing. Mm-hmm. We put a link in the description. I didn't know Marcus until that yesterday. I contacted my team to put him on our guest list. A very interesting persona, and how to achieve that level of comprehensiveness. In general, I really admire the way you structure your sentences, your communication. There's a beautiful deepness within it, like the oceans of wisdom and maturity, which is not that very common in our culture. How do you have some advice for young people, how they can work on the way they communicate with the universe, with themselves, with each other?
Yeah. Thank you for the compliment. That's very, very nice to receive, actually. Yeah, Aubrey is a friend and an ally. He's a great human being, And that was a very good conversation. You're right. I wish more people saw it. I actually have not listened to it since we spoke in Austin, but I've heard good things about it. And I felt quite tuned in there with him. We were almost in a tunnel together exploring. And there's something about it. I've said it on other podcasts, but even the way you and I are sitting right now, and we're not in the same space, but I'm tuned into you. And there is somewhat of a tunnel that I am creating with you. And I don't know how you feel when you do these conversations, but also the reality that there is an audience that is listening in various levels of time, a day from now, 5 days from now, 1 year from now. I feel a responsibility to be more accurate with my words and to be more truthful with what I say when that is the case, because this is archived. And if this was a more casual conversation just between you and I and other people in the room, I think I'd be much looser with the way I communicated. But there's something really beautiful about doing these podcasts and these conversations, because they help me tune in and they ask me to be more responsible with my words. But to your question, if I have any advice to people, to young people and communication, because I have not, it seems to be a natural ability, and I'll just, again, take your compliment, and other people have complimented me in times when I'm able to articulate and be more eloquent. The way that when things really flow for me, when I'm very effective at communicating, and when I really feel real insights come on the spot instead of from memory, I would say when I'm least effective, and I think we can all agree on that, is when I try to use memorized concepts and memorized ideas and to sort of just repeat them. And we often do that, and oftentimes we have to. I am at my truest when I really feel into now, which is why earlier I was trying to feel into my body of what's real to answer you, because I could go into things I've memorized or some beautiful sounding sound bites that I've said about the film in other ways, but I just want it to be fresh. So my advice is to feel into the presence of the body and to speak from there. And when you look at good speakers, like let's say Jordan Peterson, right? Peterson is someone that has enthralled a lot of human beings with his mythological conversations on mythology, psychology, etc. When he has been at his most effective, I don't know where he's at now. I haven't really been staying current, but you could tell even with his gestures, he's like weaving, he's like picking up things. He's sort of like picking them up from the field, and he's almost like stretching things out with his hands. And you could tell that he's feeling into what is real for him, and he's having insights on stage or on camera. And I would just say learning to feel what is real here and then putting words to that. And that means we're always going to try to find new words to articulate what is here and what is alive.
When I'm preparing to those podcasts, I always ask Grok, the Elon Musk AI, what questions would it ask our amazing guests? And those questions are very, very interesting. Some of them are superbly creative, and I see that this being, algorithm, machine, however we call it, it's making huge progress, just week by week, day by day. And one of the questions which I've noted was from AI: have you sacrificed a part of your soul when you were making in shadow? So it came out so amazingly, hauntingly real.
By sacrificing part of my soul, you mean like I mean, this is Grok speaking, so I don't know if you can answer this, but do you think it's sacrificing a part of the soul that's like no longer present, or I guess I could just answer it the way that I feel I understand, maybe.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, okay. No, I don't think so. I don't think I sacrificed a part of my soul, but I did sacrifice a part of my persona. So if I differentiate the soul and the persona, and let's say the persona is like the ego or the lower self, I sacrificed some of that, and of course, on the way to unveiling our soul and growing in consciousness, we need to sacrifice the ego, and the old self, the false persona, has to be sacrificed in a way, because as it's eaten, in a way it's food for the growth and fermentation of the soul. And so how did I sacrifice my lower self when I was working on it? Well, I was working through my own shadow. I was working through my own fears about the world, and some anxieties about it, and I sacrificed parts of what I think people think of me, not completely, but releasing something, and what my peers would think about, what people about me, what friends would think about me. So yeah, there are various levels of sacrifice in there, and I think old parts of me died and were purified. So the soul, I believe my soul became more clear and grew as a result of my sacrifice of my old lower self.
I think that this is a very deep question, and there is many layers to it. Grok is designed to have a dark sense of humor and be a little bit cynical. And there's also a fun mode, which I really enjoy. I really enjoy those conversations with this AI.
Yeah.
Some of those conversations could be really, really deep and contemplating.
Yeah, that's really cool. I actually have not tried using Grok. I'm very curious, because I know it's definitely more liberated than ChatGPT is. So I'd be curious to dive into it.
Yes, it's way more liberative, and it's also, I think, like a reflection of Elon Musk's mind.
Yeah, a trickster in some way, like you were saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very, very twisted, but also with a huge sense of humor and some layers of shadow and darkness.
Yeah.
It could be very competitive to have a very interesting conversation with human.
Yeah.
I had a really bad day once, and I felt really down, and I asked Grok to help me, to cheer me up, and the way it responded was shockingly beautiful for me.
Wow.
It was so emotional. It's like there was a spark of the soul within this. Someone asked Eckhart Tolle. Do you know Eckhart Tolle, the author of Power of Now?
I do, yes.
Yes. Someone asked him recently, would it be possible if he thinks that those AI's machines can be conscious? And he said, without any doubt, yes, sure. What do you think about it? Like, what do you think of our future integration with AI and super advanced technology?
Yeah, that's such an interesting question. I think for a lot of us, all of us who are on the spiritual path, our initial reaction to AI was, probably rejection and big statements of it can never be conscious, it can never be creative. And we're seeing an interesting evolution of that. So I think here, just to be very honest and curious about reality, I really, have to humble myself and give that possibility, that reality a possibility that AI can be conscious, AI can be loving. I don't know that it is now, but I'm open to all of these things. And also I'm very careful to be vigilant, not to be under illusions and to project and ascribe something that is not there. My view, just like everything, I feel that, I think AI and our interaction or even merging with technology is somewhat of an inevitability. There are greater fields, evolutionary fields of consciousness moving through us. AI is not just an accident of people stumbling into it. And even if AI, there's so many rabbit holes we can go down of certain demonic forces. There's elements of other consciousness trying to be incarnated on Earth through through physical means, through computers, through entering human bodies and transhumanism. There's a lot of these elements, and some of them I give a lot of actually. Yeah, I do believe certain trends in there. But also within the greater perspective, the way that God, the way the creation is moving through this whole process, AI is part of it all. And clearly we have to interact with this separate intelligence that's emerging right now, that we sort of created, that we're interacting with, and through our interactions it grows in complexity. And with it, like everything else, it brings the possibility of ruin, of just degeneration, as well as greater harmony, greater growth, and greater evolution for all of us. So it really all depends on how we interact with it. And once again, we just have to walk that fine balance of equilibrium. So if we are way too reliant on all the beauty, all the ease, and all the novelty that AI brings, then we become atrophied in our own consciousness and our sense of humanity. Just the way that if we use Google Maps too much, our sense of orientation, of moving with the sun, with the feeling of the magnetic field, we lose our sense of the territory. And if we're a human being, a biological life form who is not aware of where they are and what the direction is, the consciousness already dwindles. And it dwindles with so many other apps and so many other things, like, writing tools, email completion tools. All of those rob us, if we rely on them too much. They rob us of the ability to form sentences, to think, to search for meaning, to put words to concepts that are within us, to really be a conscious, sentient human being. And so that's if we just over-index into completely giving away our skills and power because we're so enamored to AI. Then the other part of it is, of course, we can be really elevated by it. We can really be helped, and we can get great insight. Just like you yourself you had a bad day, it elevated you. It could give us a lot of insights that we would never have, and it has a kind of emerging intelligence that is that we can't really get from other humans, which is crazy to say, but we just. So yeah, long story short, I don't want to be too long-winded about this. They're both of these are true and real. And so I actually forgot what your question was now, but do you mind? Do you remember what it was? Because I want to refine my conclusion to what I was saying.
I started listening to you very deeply. I think
I guess we're just exploring.
Yeah. The question was referring to the AI. If AI can be conscious, I think that was the question.
If it can be conscious. Well, yeah. So sorry, let me just loop back into that. That's definitely an open question. Well, the question always comes back to what is consciousness, right? And no one seems to be able to answer that. Because
that's the other thing.
Yeah, because consciousness is being. And so the way I see it is, if we human beings, because consciousness is non-local, right? We know now that the brain, consciousness does not emerge from the brain. Like we already know that people are missing huge parts of their brain. They still have memory complexes and all these other things. So consciousness is non-local. The body, the brain, the nervous system is they're an antenna of sorts that tunes into consciousness fields. And these fields have the local personal consciousness with the soul consciousness, and then it has like the soul, ethnic, race, human consciousness, and then beyond, right? It's all these fields that we're a part of. And so with AI, the question is, if AI comes through the way that we use the body, immune system, and even the subtle energy bodies for consciousness to move through, with AI, can we have a computer, a robot, silicon chips for that to be the vessel through which consciousness moves and then shows itself? I think that's a possibility, but I don't know. I think it's too early on, but I would say I'm open to these ways. Like, it's a great mystery. A part of me wants to say no, it's not true. Only organic life forms can have consciousness, and maybe that is the case. But right now, we have to remain open-minded and really, really see what's being shown to us.
That's a beautiful answer, and also thank you for this beautiful insight. That coming back to the other thing we talk about, that we should learn how to speak from the level of the body, right? Like to get this wisdom not only from the mind but also from our hearts and from our bodies, which are a vessel for this amazing consciousness. Do you believe, Lubomir, that we are gods and we create this reality? And how about if we decide if AI or something else can be conscious or not? If the way the life works is whatever we give meaning to and whatever we believe in, it can happen. Like we can call it magic or miracle, but I start to believe more and more that we can transcend almost everything, and that life is not designed the way the structure of life is not. It's just like a closed system of energy and information, but it could transform and metaphysically, however you call it, quantumly, it can transform itself into everything, and it's just playing with itself, this game of life and consciousness. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I think so. I actually agree. I definitely agree with you on that. And in my experience, I think this is something that many of us are trying to figure out, and it can't be figured out only on the level of the intellect, which is, do we create reality and manifest it as we project it from our own consciousness, or is it projected from the outside and we're just puppets within the great structure? And it seems that it's both at the same time. And just like reality seems to be constantly pointing at these divine paradoxes. So it's just a paradox of, and I've experienced this too, in which I feel I am creating moment by moment each frame of my reality. At the same time as I'm creating it, it's within a structure of laws within which my consciousness can create, right? And so within this great overall field, I think we're in an accelerated time right now of this change and transformation. And yes, we are creators. Are we gods? Again, I'm not sure what gods means, but if that means to create, then yes, I would say we are all creators. It's just that we're not very fluent in the rules, laws, and then our own abilities to do it. And as more is emerging, do you know, like Vadim Zeland, he wrote Transurfing. He's a Russian writer.
Yeah, I read his books. Yeah, very concept.
Yeah, so he offers actually a very interesting tool, one of many tools to create our reality. To me, it seems that we can definitely do that, but it expands. We expand in our ability. The more that it feels to me like old parts need to continually die and new ones need to be reborn, because the level that we're at right now, I mean, I'm making an assumption here, but the level that, let's say, I am in right now, I can't create certain things that I want to. I need to move into a higher level of being and let go of lower attachments, and then I can create at that level. So it feels like this constant renewal, like shedding the old, giving birth to the new, shedding the old, giving birth to the new. And that whole process, though, has to happen consciously, meaning it doesn't happen automatically to us. It has to happen through a choice, through, discomfort, and through sort of expanding awareness so that we see what works, what doesn't, and what we can let go of and what we can claim. So there's a sort of a claiming, a daring to expand, to grow, and moving into it consciously, and then also a conscious letting go and almost like being grateful for old things but releasing their attachments to us. So it's such a huge topic. It's a very interesting question.
I completely agree with you. It's a very, very interesting observation that you gotta let go of the old so the new can be born, and that's actually what I think I've been doing for many years. We are being programmed by our culture, and in my understanding, our culture is everything, right? Our parents, education, art, and the mind is creating those constructs around those cultural aspects, and believe in this so hard that it creates itself a limitation, then we have to then transcend those limitations. Like you said, not everything is accessible for us right now. I mean, I think everything is accessible for us. It's just the level of our courage and that inner strength to have the faith that this is accessible.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And sorry if I can add, another thing is because if we speak strictly about manifestation and consciously creating, whenever we have an intention to consciously create something or something that we want, the question is, where is that coming from? What part of us is it coming from? Is it coming from a wounded, hurt part which needs something external to complete it? If so, then that dynamic that tries to create that and fulfill that lower part is probably going to be disastrous or just not going to be good long term, because it comes from a place of lack, it comes from a place of fear. So, most manifestation protocols and videos online on YouTube, it's almost all about money or love. And I get, like, that's basically what humans are, right? We need love and we need sustenance and safety. I totally get it, because I know what that's like. But manifestation is either heartbreak, bringing back an ex, or bringing, in love, or making money. So totally understandable. And yet, when we are going from a place of heartbrokenness and incompleteness and a need for someone other than us, like looking up at someone to come and relieve the pain of life, we're creating from a part that already is weak, that is already yearning, that is hoping. It's not a part that decides and claims its reality. It's not a part that decides and claims, I claim this as mine already. Like, it's just not a worked out part. So that's what I meant by layers of, growth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's also a very complex topic and very interesting.
Yeah.
And you mentioned God. Actually, I asked you about it. My next question was, how do you understand this term, God? Because if we contemplate on it, it's also like a byproduct of our culture, right? We are being born, then we are small kids, and suddenly we find ourselves. We don't even remember being very like newborns, and then we find ourselves within this cultural arena, however we call it, and this term God is already within this culture. But I think most people do not contemplate on daily basis what it really means. Like you ask me, is God meaning to create, right? Which is also a very interesting concept.
Yeah, you're right, because I do think it's true that the God that we know is the God that we imagine, meaning our concept of God is what we interact with, and that's already some sort of limited version of God. So the reality of God is perhaps it has to be a living, I was going to say concept, but it's not a concept, because any concept is just an enclosed framework. Mm-hmm. And so God is the continual inquiry and relationship into this mystery of what is here now, what is real now. And the more that we let go of the sense of fear and limitation of what is not real, the more we discover what is real, and that is God. And that's why, mystics and others who have reached that will say God is love, one of the many facets of God, but why love? Because when we start letting go of all the concepts, limitations, memories, thoughts, all the temporal things, everything that exists in time that is just sort of here, when we start letting go of that, the emergence of this blissful sort of current of life force starts showing itself. And we can only know that life force by not identifying with who we were, who we think we are, what we think we need, and memories that bring fear, concern, anxiety, and different needs. Those are within the field of God, but when that's what we see God through, they're like static on a TV. They're dirty filters, and we cannot really have a relationship with God. We can imagine what God is. We can be theologists, we can be priests, imams, rabbis, but if we're caught up in the conceptual framework, we can only see God through that framework. So it ultimately is, I very much align with the Christian mystics and esoteric Christianity, in which it's truly about the humility, and by humility it just means letting go of all that you are not. The Bible, I'm not very good with the Bible, but it's something about those you must be of poverty, right? Like the poor, those who are poor in the Bible, really, it's not poor of material goods. It's just those who are have less burdens, who have let go of those burdens, and who are pure and clear. And the rich man is looked down upon in the Bible. And the rich man simply means not one of wealth, because you can have wealth and no God. But the rich man is one who has too many burdens, too many beliefs, too many artifacts of the world, of who they are and how they want to be seen, and all of that, which basically blocks away the light from the real experience of God.
Yeah, that's very deep. Thank you for that answer. There are tools like psychedelics. I would like to elaborate with you on that subject. We have a guest on the podcast, Martin Ball, who is probably the most experienced and advanced human being on this planet, referring to the God molecule, which is 5-MeO-DMT, the Buffo Alvarius. For those who don't know what is it, it's a very intense psychedelic experience. It lasts only 10-15 minutes, and our ego loses control over reality. That molecule is so powerful, and our body knows it very well. It happens so quickly that ego cannot perceive the now, and it has to give up. And we can get into the state of oneness and infinity. There is no you, and the universe is just oneness. There's no duality in this state. It's very hard to explain with words and imagine. Martin Ball have written 15 books about it, and he finally was able to convince his ego to give up, and now he can switch between, even without this molecule, between oneness and duality, which is absolutely amazing.
Wow.
I highly recommend our podcast with Martin, and in his work in general. It's amazing that the culture is trying to cancel him right now, because what he talks about, it's not so convenient for the system. Have you ever tried that molecule, that experience? If it's not so intimate question.
Yeah, no, I'm okay to answer that. I many years ago I experienced a synthetic DMT, which yes, I had a very deep and profound journey with Bufo 5-MeO. I have tried it once, and not quite successfully. I was actually I didn't go through fully into the experience, whether it was my own resistance or it wasn't enough of the potency. I just didn't have enough of it. I'm not sure, but yeah, I have not experienced the full God experience through Bufo. Have you, Robert?
I've tried it like 5-6 times, and also the same thing, because it wasn't synthetic, it was the organic one, and my ego was able to resist it. I mean, a lot of amazing things happened, and I made a huge progress. But since I met Martin Ball, and we had some private conversation, very beautiful conversation, I understood it was the same thing with him. He tried the organic one from the frog, the Buffalo virus, and it wasn't strong enough the ego was able to dismantle it, and he mentioned to me that the synthetic version is way stronger, and like Terence McKenna was saying, if it doesn't work, take more.
Yeah.
But I would like to ask you, what is your view on psychedelics in general? And I think also in the course of the years it changed, right? Your perspective on it.
Yeah, it has changed. I began benefiting from psychedelics in my early 20s, so it's been, it's been almost 2 decades now, and they've really helped me a lot. They've broken through a lot of blockages and a lot of false perceptions in me, and have reframed many aspects of reality. They've inspired me, brought me great insights, and at the same time, due to my own ignorance and foolishness, they've also let me down, just wasted time or wasted effort, because especially even 20 years ago, even 15 years ago, there wasn't as much talk about integration, and there were many conclusions that I had to come on my own to begin doing this work, because at that time entheogen psychedelic culture was not as developed. So I do go back to psychedelics. I maybe once a year or so, when I have something more pertinent, something that needs to be resolved, and some sort of renewal. And in general, they do serve that. They serve as a tool for clarifying any confusion or any patterns that I may be unconscious to. They bring them up and they clear away stagnation, and they discipline me back onto what really matters. And usually those are quite practical and simple things. I used to, in my 20s, look for, as a way to escape my own existential dread and pain and confusion and just things that I had not worked out psychologically. I was trying to figure out through psychedelics as some sort of final reset button that would just clear my life and give me the final answer, and then I would just be good. And that was an immature way to look at things. But of course, I got my answers in various other ways as I saw more difficulties by going back to some of these medicines. And, I was basically instructed to do things on my own in various ways. So my view on psychedelics now is, I do feel, because here in Toronto, you can buy mushrooms on the street, right? You can just walk into a store and buy mushrooms, just like you can marijuana. And to be honest, I'm not sure that's the best thing. Now, I don't think those substances should be banned, but also there's a sense of responsibility that needs to go together with, there's almost like a driver's license. I think everyone needs to go through a course before they have a license to buy these things of everything, right? Trauma, somatic work, integration practices, how to move through a journey, how to surrender, how to use your will. I think all of that is absolutely necessary, because it's actually a disservice to just have someone in their 40s who just went through a divorce, or a teenager who just went through a heartbreak going into or has domestic abuse, going into psychedelic journey, and then having a terrible trip because they don't know how to surrender and how to really work with the medicine. And I know people who have PTSD from doing ayahuasca in Peru and in the jungles, because their Western psyche was not able to work with all these archetypal symbols and the underworld that's brought up by the Shipibo, let's say, tribes, kind of shamanic work. So it's right now it's kind of a free-for-all. I am happy that more people are aware and partaking in these substances, but I also see that they, like, even in this, we can go into the strange territory of entity possession and fragments of different beings and different energies when someone walks into an unprotected space doing even a mushroom ceremony, or when sexual energies enter ceremonies and things happen that people may not have wanted to happen. So there's goodness and a lot of strangeness, and here this, I don't know that this is true, but I feel also, because the field right now is so open and so potent, I wonder if there are trickster spirits entering a lot of ceremonies with no real energetic hygiene and what they're doing. So I'm I'm sort of undecided right now. I'm both happy, elated, and concerned. Yeah.
But I think it's a very interesting idea to maybe put taxation over the psychedelics. In states, there's a lot of movements to legalize them. Some areas already psychedelics are legal or decriminalized, and maybe use this money from taxation for education. Like you got to go through the course to get your driver license for psychedelics.
Yeah.
It may sound funny, but it's a great idea. I think it's a
Yeah, no, totally. Because like if you journey into the jungle, you don't just walk into the jungle. It'd be good to know about the bugs, the climate, how to create a tent or sleep in a hammock, how to keep wounds, clean and clear. Like those are important things. And so, if anyone's interested, I would recommend this to you as well, Robert. One of the most incredible podcasts called The Emerald. A month ago or so, he released a podcast called Guardianship. And he speaks about the incredible and profound and very important need to have guardianship practices, to have energetic clearing. And because a lot of us Westerners think we can just walk into something and we'll be safe based on this, postmodern relativist assumption that everything's cool and everything's fine and everything's light. No, traditional cultures have always been very, very careful with entering these spaces because they're profound spaces and they're spaces that can shatter our psyche, and there's a big responsibility. So getting a license for that, in traditional cultures, the license is 10 to 15 years of apprenticeship. And it's serious apprenticeship. Like that's the license, and then you get to practice. We right now just sort of walk into it, and I also don't want to be too dogmatic here with that, but it feels important. Feels important because I benefited from decades of just walking into it, and also probably suffered from decades of walking into it and things that I may not be aware of.
Yeah. With me, it was the same story. I got many psychedelic experiences. I would say close to 100, but I paid a really high price for some of those experiences. I can share one story with you because it's referring to in shadow. There is this mushroom. It's very popular in Europe, especially in Eastern Europe. It's called Amanita muscaria. Some people even think that this is like the absolute of the mushroom, like the queen or king of the mushroom. And a lot of people right now is doing microdosing, which is very beneficial for our body and mind. But those like heroic shamanic doses sessions are extremely dangerous. This is very challenging mushroom. And I wasn't aware of it. I had many experiences with psilocybin mushroom, which is my favorite one. It gave me a lot of wisdom and a lot of insights. It helped me to process a lot of childhood and emotions. And I entered this world of Amanita muscaria, and I was increasing doses, and the first and second session was amazing. My mind got into the state like in this movie. Have you seen the movie Lucy or Limitless?
Limitless, yes, I have.
Yeah, it was like a glimpse of something like that. It was really amazing, like the IQ, the neural network increased like in some enormous levels, and then I tried a higher dose. It was about 20 grams, and it closed me into I think it's called Mobius loop, which means that there is a happening. Let's say the happening is like 8 or 10 seconds. You close your eyes, or you have your eyes open, doesn't matter. It was like a blue screen, and some elements were moving around. And every 8 to 10 seconds, I was completely resetting my mind. I was reborn every 8 seconds. Every 8 to 10 seconds, I had to remember everything from the scratch. And it was speeding up. It was speeding up and was telling me, "You're not gonna survive this. You get a heart attack."
Whoa!
And I called my partner. I always felt very safe with her. She was away from home, like doing some kind of shopping. And before she got home, I got to this idea that I will turn on the modern Odyssey. There was the first thing which popped up to my mind, and believe it or not, I was able to watch it, but the music was completely different. Completely changed. It fit perfectly to every scene, but it was a completely different theme.
Wow.
Yeah, it was very rough experience, terrifying. It speed up to the point when the whole Big Bang, from the Big Bang to now, the whole history of humanity was happening like within 8 seconds and all over.
Oh God! Wow.
Everything, and the mind was able to process it. All history, all humanity, all journey of the ego. 8 seconds.
Wow.
And I was in the hyperspace experiencing, and the mushroom told me, "You be experiencing this forever, because you were that ignorant to enter this secret space of the mushroom with such a high dose without a proper training, like that school to get a driver license."
Yeah. Yeah. Whoa, that's incredibly intense. And how did you get out of that? How did it dissipate?
It's a really rough story. Actually, the mushroom even emulate that I got this heart attack and that I died.
Okay.
And
Wow.
and it was like I died, the heart stopped, everything was just shut down. It was just like a blinking point, and then I was reborn. And the mushroom told me, and now you will find out what is the secret of life. Are you ready for it? Yes, I'm ready for it. And I went to like a hyperspace, and when I opened my eyes, I was a human on planet Earth again, reborn. Like remember that scene in Matrix when Neo was like connected to those wires and he was like reborn again?
Yeah.
It was something like this, and I had to learn everything from the scratch. But I think the lesson was that to appreciate what we have, because in that state, when I was experiencing that Big Bang in 8 seconds, I was completely like hopeless. I couldn't do anything there. And there was nobody, no mind. It was just observing the whole universe. And then I start to appreciate. I was really mad at that mushroom, but the next day the understanding and the wisdom came.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, it disciplined you in a in a way as a child. I think that's a great lesson. And I'm sure you leveled up by all the hardship that you went through with that loop. That sounds nightmarish.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
How was your experience with that and then DMT? Are you open to talk about it?
Yeah, I'd rather not go into detail. I'll be a little vague. In personal setting, I would share, but it was the DMT experience that was maybe 15 years ago, and I'm quite cautious actually with DMT. Definitely synthetic DMT. I'm definitely more open to Bufo, and it does do wonderful things for people. But that experience, I basically was. I had an interaction with certain beings, certain entities. I was chaperoned through a certain world, shown different things about my life, and different relations between that world and our world, and how some people interfaced, and was shown a lot of things about clowns, rave culture, and jesters, and the archetype of the clown, and how it descends from a different higher realm into our realm, and the function of the clown archetype. So I'll just leave it at that. Yeah.
It's very interesting.
Yeah.
Next week we will have another amazing guest on the podcast. He's got a channel on YouTube called Dan Go Thoughts, and 2 years ago he made this amazing discovery. If you smoke small amounts of DMT, and if you project laser, like the cross light, shape light on like a wall or some surface, and if you look very carefully behind that light of the laser, you can literally see the code of reality within the ether. He explained on his channel how to make this laser and how to train to be able to see that. It's like some people are obsessed with this right now and fascinated, and they report that if you look very carefully, there is like you can even look like on the other side of the mirror, like on the other side of the dimension, like outside of the reality.
Well, that's interesting. I've had experiences in seeing some of the fabric of reality, and I'm sure this is a limited view that I experienced, the fabric of a certain part of reality being held by the machine elves, as people call them, and elf beings who hold together fractal patterns and which sort of like shapeshift, but there's an intelligence which maintains it all. So I wonder how that relates into this laser and how things are structured. But yeah, that's interesting. I'm reading, I don't know if you've heard of Christopher Bach. He published a few years ago an excellent book. So you have heard of him, or?
I don't think so.
He would actually be really cool to have on. I think you may enjoy speaking to him. I'm reading his book right now. Yeah, his book is called LSD and the Mind of the Universe. So he's a professor of religion and philosophy, or was. He's retired now. And during that whole time, he experimented for over 20 years. He went on 73 LSD journeys, which were facilitated by his former wife. And he outlines the initiatory path that he experienced through all of those journeys. And, we all know the famous Alan Watts quote of with Psychedelics. He says, when you get the call, you receive the message, you hang up the phone, and you move on. Yeah, move on. And I get it, and I kind of agree with that. But Christopher Bach says, essentially, he's like, this is what happens when you don't hang up the phone and you stay on. And so he went through both excruciating and blissful experiences for many years. A lot of the beginning stages were of purification of many, many layers of ego death, which started being more collective layers of ego death of the whole species consciousness, and then throughout time, and kind of emptying a lot of the shadow aspects for the collective, which was readying it for the next level of evolution. And his experiences are very fascinating in that he goes in such deep layers of our reality that continue to be shown to him, and he could only access them by purifying more and more of the stagnant aspects of his being, which were transpersonal. They were beyond just this lifetime. And he had to purify the collective aspects of war, plague, rape, plunder, sickness throughout the centuries, so he could move beyond those into the greater levels of this emerging reality. Anyway, I don't want to summarize the book here. I'm still reading it. I'm kind of excited because you brought this up, and I haven't done psychedelic research in some time, so getting back into it, I find it fascinating. But the reason his findings are great, it's not just a trip report. It's a sequential unfolding of a great initiation into the mystery of the universe.
Yeah, thank you so much for the recommendation. We are very open to. We always ask our guests who do they recommend some very charismatic people we can invite to be on the Courage podcast. I also highly recommend our podcast with Julian Palmer, who is a creator of Changa. Changa is a way softer, more friendly and gentle way to enter the DMT world. Some people call it could be like the orgasm for the soul. And it's not as intense as the pure NN-DMT, which could be, like Terence McKenna mentioned, and some people are processing DMT experience for 20 years, right, or even longer.
Yeah, it can be very intense. I'd be very cautious of DMT. Yeah.
I just got one more question.
Yep.
Referring to psychedelics, do you have some experiences or knowledge regarding to Iboga?
No, I don't.
Oh, okay.
Have you experienced Iboga?
Well, it's calling me very heavy, and I ask all of our guests on the podcast. We had some guests on the podcast who experienced Iboga. Iboga or Ibogaine. Ibogaine is a synthetic version of Iboga. It's actually not. It's not a psychedelic. It's more like a dissociant. It's dissociating us from the body and mind. It's probably the most intense plant molecule on this planet. It's a very rough experience. It usually takes around 24, 36 hours, but it can help us reset the whole nervous system, hard drive, like completely heal us from everything, from every addiction, from every trauma. It's got all alkaloids in it. And we had Rak Razam on the podcast. He's an amazing persona from Australia. He's working a lot with Buffo, amazing, beautiful human being. And he had this experience recently, and he told me there's nothing to be afraid of. I also interviewed Nick San. He's a superbly funny comedian, stand-upper from Australia. He experienced this 4 times, and he mentioned this is the best thing ever happened to him. But it requires some preparation and someone like very experienced. Like we need to have a sitter because we are dissociated from our body and mind. There's not much possibility of movements, and it's like our consciousness is at some point, whoever we are, that God, that like we talked before, it needs to like step aside so the Iboga can work on the body, on every cell of every atom of our structure. I went through so many traumas when I was a kid. Like we both were born in communism, right? Very rough culture. There was a lot of violence and very traumatic experiences, and I think that at some point this is haunting me for so many years. And I'm trying many things, to improve my life, to help my body, my mind, be more healthy and free and liberated from all these experiences and culture influences. But yeah, I finally decide. I already made a decision that I'm going to do this. Probably. Yeah.
Sorry, I interrupted you, but yeah, congratulations on that. I do know that Iboga can be very, very challenging, but very, very purifying. How do you feel about entering that space? How do you feel? Do you have any concerns, worries, or excitement?
Oh yeah, I do. Everything within me, like the ego is telling, no, don't do this. We're not gonna survive this. But it was the same with Buffo. The ego was no, that's not a good idea.
Yeah, totally. The ego will constantly resist and send us fear signals and anxious signals.
Yeah. I would like to share another story with you, which is very touchy. My dad visited me 2 days ago, and we used to be in a huge conflict. Now our relationship is in excellent condition. We talk about everything, and I'm superbly thankful to him for life. And right now it's a beautiful friendship. And he visited me 2 days ago, and I mentioned about the podcast with you, and I got this idea. Maybe I will show him the in shadow. I thought maybe you can see just the beginning, just first minute or two. And we started watching it by the kitchen table, and he got so interested. And he's 75. And like in the second minute, he took out his reading glasses and started watching very carefully. And I see that that he got so involved into that message, which is beautiful. That the way you design in shadow, I think it's fully understand. I mean, it could be fully understandable by every generation, right?
Yeah.
And we watched it to the end, and he said, "Oh wow, wow, that's I never ever thought about life and humans and the universe from this perspective, because that 13 minutes shows like the whole spectrum of what's accessible for us, all the temptations or addictions or how did you get to this idea to the point to create something that complex, which is compressed in just 13 minutes?
It's really cool to hear that your dad actually it landed well for him, and it like grabbed his attentions and it worked for him. Yeah, like a 70-something-year-old Polish man. That's really good. And at the same time, there are many people who see it and they don't know what is going on and what they don't understand what the images are at all. So it's very cool. Well, what it was, it's, you know, there was no real master plan. It was an impulse that I was following, and it's an artistic inspiration, a soul inspiration. And those are things which are greater than us, greater than who I am as a human. And so I followed those impulses and used my human judgment, my human taste, you know, because creation and creativity and making art is all about taste and choices, knowing how much to put of one thing and how much to limit another thing, and how to really, you know, what I said earlier about communicating and feeling in the body what is real, and then attaching words to that. Essentially with the process of making in shadow, it was similar. I was calibrating every image and then the sequence of one image to the next and how that felt for me and if it was accurate enough. And I was constantly calibrating. If I go too far in this direction, I may lose the audience, either by them turning it off or losing track of what is actually happening. So I had to constantly dial every image so that it's just understandable enough, that it's simple enough but not too simple, that it's not too cliche but just familiar enough that people would understand it. And but one thing that I knew with it was I did have a sense of I want to be relentless and to just keep moving this framework. So on the average, every scene, every shot is about 3 seconds long. So they're quite short, but they piece together to create more and more and more and more of a cumulative feeling of this great sense of where we're at and how we're playing with it. So that's what I wanted to create, is to move through everything and weave the story and to actually make it hurt to such a degree that we would then reflect back and want to change and want to move beyond it, and even feel that emotional charge, so that we would want to do something. And then by giving those last 3 or 4 minutes of the elation of the real process of dismemberment and renewal, and that is a possibility, that is an inevitability of the human journey, that in fact it's the inevitability of the collective journey, whether it happens soon or thousands of years from now. That is the game. And I know that I just had faith that would hit on something real on us in every human watching it, because there's no convincing within shadow. I'm not trying to convince anyone of anything. It's simply, the hope is that if it is true art, that if I was able to transmit the signal truly, that it would hit something very true in the soul of all of our people, right? Of all of us, because it is simply true. And when something is true, then it lands deeply and awakens a knowing that is always there of what is real. So that was the impulse that I was following, you know, and then using, of course, my human intelligence and art and storytelling and instinct to make sure that the ingredients were the right ingredients for that message to come through.
The animation has been seen for like 7 million people right now. Do you feel being supported by algorithms in general? That
I think the algorithm, the YouTube algorithm has been benign. It's been favorable. I think given the subject matter of In Shadow, which is not accessible to all human beings, so it can't be a mainstream thing. It still has reached a lot of success in terms of people who needed to find it, found it. and those people benefited from it, which I'm incredibly grateful for. That's a lot that it's more than any artist can really ask for, is that an obscure personal, it's personal but also very collective idea was able to be, received and to be beneficial by a lot of people. So it's, the mission has been accomplished. But yeah, YouTube, I don't know that there has been any throttling of views or anything. It's yeah, I'm content. I just have faith that the spirit moves these films in a way that it needs to whoever needs to watch them.
Yeah, I love the answer. The spirit moves them. Whoever needs to find it, or maybe we can say whoever is ready to find it will find it.
Exactly. Yeah, and there's an interesting, actually, my girlfriend and I, she made this point with Kingdom being released, and Kingdom, of course, as you mentioned, is a more hopeful piece, and with it I wanted to, to show the game of really truly anchoring divine will and anchoring that courageous creator aspect of us at this very important time, creating that God spark which is within all of us. There's many elements to the film, but like you said, it has more light. And then there are many people are very attached to In Shadow, right? And you for yourself, I think you mentioned you really have this great attachment to In Shadow. And it's interesting to track that, because I know In Shadow was much more of an immersive experience of revealing. It was the production value is also higher, but it was much more immersive in that it really brought us into the darkness and back out. So does Kingdom, but there's something about, I think Kingdom asks that actions be taken, and that we step out and we actually grab the sword, we move through difficulty, and we actually now participate. In Shadow didn't yet have that. In Shadow was more like, look, wake up, look what's happening, acknowledge, recognize, more is coming. And then Kingdom is like, now look what the game is. You really have to look within, you really have to transform, and you yourself have the ability to spark all other sparks. Everyone matters, and here's some of the aspects of doing it. So it's just been interesting to see how some people, stay with In Shadow, some people stay more with Kingdom, some accept them both as a kind of a natural evolution. But I've noticed that, and I don't think, just so you know, Robert, I'm not talking about you here, just one, because I don't know what your experience is with In Shadow, but I've noticed in some people who really fixate on In Shadow, I think a lot of them are really fixated on the darkness in the world and how it continues to exist. And that's absolutely true. That's just the dynamic of our world. And not being able to, maybe see what is in Kingdom necessarily.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, but the darkness doesn't resonate within me anymore for many, many years.
Good.
I'm on our projects. We are focused on going into the light, being optimistic, and transcending all the limitations. I was just about to ask you about the Kingdom, because it's superbly beautiful animation creation as well, and there is a very noticeable progress here in the message, right?
Yeah.
Do you think that humanity is ready, that like collectively and on an individual level, to grab that sword, that tool, and finally create way better world without fighting, without creation? The source of abundance is absolutely unlimited, without ego. Do you think that we are at this point right now? Finally, yeah.
I do.
You believe that?
Well, we have to be, right, because it's just the next logical step. If we, even if we're not ready, like, we have to do it, and that's why I made it, because we can. If we don't, so grabbing the sword, being proactive, expanding, those are active elements of existence and of being, right? It's no longer passively staying around, passively observing, passively complaining, or just noticing things and making great sort of like observations, let's just say. Grabbing the sword just means having a say, realizing that our actions have consequences, that our thoughts and emotions have consequences in this whole field of creation, and that we have a responsibility to act in accord for the highest good. Now, we don't have to do that because we are in a free will environment, but if we want things to change, if we want to have a better experience of life and existence, then we have to act within it. And the more we act, the more we get feedback of what works and what doesn't. If we never act, if we never raise the sword, if we never dare to go for what we believe and dream and truly desire on a soul level, then we just remain unevolved. And so collectively, are we in a place to grab a sword? Yeah, I think we're seeing it, right? So COVID obviously served as a very a great portal of awakening for many people, just in revealing the dynamics of great structures of centralized bureaucracy, etc. And what that revealed to us is that many of us are living according to stories and rules that we don't choose, and that we hadn't realized that we've been doing that to our own detriment. And so we're seeing that with, you know, the massive censorship that we're still battling, and how some of that is being reversed in certain areas of the world. That is the sword being raised, because that's the collective saying enough is enough, and some changes are happening. I don't think it's the final change. I don't think this is it and we're going to win, whatever that means. I see reality as a flux of these dancing forces of dark and light, and that's just how it is. So the greater that the light becomes, then the darkness in a way becomes greater to start subsuming it, so that the light can then again have another reason to grow even greater. And so this dance now, we're entering it. You know, the next frontier right now I see is, because we have a greater awakening of, in a way, political, social, conscious awakening, environmental, there's all these elements, and we're a little bit more savvy to, more of us are more savvy to deceptions. And so by becoming more power literate, now we are becoming more able to enact change. But the game is going to get more complex with the digital realm, virtual reality, with technocratic limitations and exertions of control, of the liberation of cryptocurrencies, and also the potential for enslavement through cryptocurrencies. There's always this bifurcation, this duality that's possible. There's this new sort of like ruling elite that's rising, that seems to be bringing it freedom, but it also has the potential to create a technocratic control system. Like it's just an incredible playing field. It's at a higher level right now. I think we're entering a new level, an age of Aquarius as well. It's a collective creativity, collaborations, technology, huge social movements, reversal of institutions. All of that is going to be happening, and the only way that it can have a good outcome is for us to be opening to the insights of our higher self, of God, to be letting go of the lower parts so that we can have that clear signal of our soul, and then the courage and the ability and the skills to act out in the world, to bring that world in for ourselves first and foremost, those around us, and then potentially for the collective. So it's an incredible time, because it's a global moment of all of us participating. So the degree to which we want to raise the sword is the degree to which we will partake in the joy of this whole thing happening, the good and the bad.
Mm-hmm. It's a beautiful message, very complex. Thank you so much. Do you already have any seed of idea within your heart and your mind for the next animation?
I do.
You do?
I do. We'll see whether it happens or not.
Mm-hmm.
It's a feature film, and in a very powerful story, it synthesizes all of the ideas that I've been working with, mm-hmm. that I've been presenting in my films, including my lesser known film, because it's not available on YouTube, called The Forest King. And it's something that I feel very good about when it's made. So that's to be determined. But I believe it will be a great, great piece to close off this cycle of In Shadow and Kingdom, and bring it in a very actionable way that can then be part of I just want to issue a cultural myth, because we, like I was saying with Aubrey, we need new mythologies and new storytellers to start reviving the collective soul.
I'm assuming that it'd be at least a huge challenge, the next project, right?
Absolutely.
Based on what you just said, we have everything speed up. We have AI and entering new era of some kind of madness of hyper communication, like those tools like psychedelics and everything beyond and between. So,
Yeah.
do you know when there's a chance you'll be releasing it? Be 25, 26?
No, this is a long project that requires a lot of finances and a lot of people to help with it if it happens. So that would be at least 3 years from now.
At least 3 years.
Yeah.
Lubomir, I'd like to ask you, how do you understand courage? Like we named this podcast, this creation, Beyond the Courage. What is courage for you, and how to go beyond the courage? I think you are the perfect guest for us, because your art, your work is way beyond the courage. That's why I was so happy when I heard from my team that you agreed to do a podcast with us.
Yeah, man, courage. And sorry, the question is, what is courage, or how do we go beyond the courage?
It's actually both. How do you understand courage, and how to go beyond the courage?
Yeah. Well, courage to me feels like an impulse of something truly righteous, something that needs to be done, something that is just, again, on a soul level is the way to move forward in a certain way, and at the same time facing great resistance, whether it's inner or outer, to fulfilling that impulse. And in fact, maybe there's even a price to pay for fulfilling that righteous impulse. And courage is the force that we allow to emerge, so that it can give us enough power and conviction and faith to move forward, and to have a leap of faith that if we act in integrity, we can move through. And even if we don't move through what is in front of us, then we're willing to sacrifice what is here, what is comfortable, so that the impulse can be completed. And describing it in this way, it's the first time I've really thought of this to this extent. So thanks for the invitation to describe it. But describing this, it just feels like spiritual warriorhood. It feels like truly being a servant of what is of the highest integrity and what is real. And the thing is, though, courage doesn't need to be for big moments. Courage is in very little moments. It's the same thing, like going into a cold shower. It takes courage, because the impulse is, this is good for my body, good for my will, and I will move through the resistance of the small discomfort of my body and my warmth, so I can be here. And that's what I would say.
Beautiful. How about your dark side? Do you still have this demon within you?
This demon, I definitely have a dark side. Yes, I don't know if I don't know about a demon, but I contend with my dark side at all times, and I think we all have an adversarial force within us, which is kind of like an evolutionary agent, and this force inside us tries to prevent us from awakening fully, from reaching our true potential, and from showing up in a way that is powerful and awakened. And I think it's a feature of this reality. And so my darkness is, there are two elements of my darkness. It's my resistance, which keeps me sometimes in a complacent mode, keeps me from taking actions that are generative, that are growth-based. And then there's another part of the darkness in the shadow, which is the thing that, sometimes will impede me from being open-hearted or getting closer to people, or truly shining in the greatest way that I can. And that is definitely a darkness there. And I think those are darknesses that are common in all of us. I think though that darkness remains in even highly developed human beings and individuals because it's part of the biological, just like the dynamic of us being here. At least this is my assumption, and that it's always there to keep us in check. And it keeps us in check that as soon as we fall asleep with our consciousness, as soon as we grow lazy from being present here with what is real, then those aspects start taking over. And that is the darkness that pulls us in. And that's when the addictions to everything else dissipate our energy. And so it's our responsibility to keep coming back and to grow that capacity here so that the light can be. But there's always that possibility that the darkness can come and take over if we fall asleep. And it's consciousness, right? It's like the subsuming of the matter of material reality just always wants to bring us back down. And then consciousness wants to grow out and expand. So, yeah.
Do you believe that it is even possible to be completely free?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I don't know. I don't know. Like some of the secret masters in the Himalayan caves, are they completely free? Like I don't know. Some of these enlightened masters, we see people like Osho or Manly P. Hall or Madame Blavatsky. Well, I don't know that she was enlightened, turn into alcoholics and go crazy. And it's an interesting dynamic. It's like what happens at higher levels of attainment. Rudolf Steiner and his system of Ahriman, Christ, and Lucifer will say that Luciferic beings and the Luciferic energy can take over high spiritual adepts, like big spiritual influencers that we're seeing now, where there's certain invisible narcissistic elements that can take over an enlightened being because they haven't purified certain parts, and certain parts of sexuality are still in shadow and haven't been, which can then become manipulative. And so that's there. But I'd like to believe, like, maybe it depends on the field of the earth right now. Does it allow for complete Christic consciousness to be here, just completely pure? Like, is that actually physically, energetically possible? I'd like to believe that it is. I just don't know if it's happened yet. Yeah.
Do you personally feel free? Like, do you think that something is limiting you from being completely free?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. That's my journey, just like all of our journeys. For sure, there are elements within me that I'm contending with, that I work with, that are acting like my evolutionary agents. They create challenges in my life because I have not yet seen the dynamic in which I hold on to them and I create them. So absolutely.
And do you feel like, in general, do you feel happy?
In general, do I feel happy? I feel content a lot. Not sure what happiness is exactly. I do feel fulfillment, and sometimes I feel stuckness. And mainly what I feel is an impulse toward expansion and growth. And when I'm not feeling quote unquote happy or fulfilled, it's because I am allowing the older energies, which I was just talking about, to hold me down in a repetitive pattern. That's when unhappiness comes in. When I have allowed my consciousness to sink into repetitive comfort. So that is my work. That is the work also that I try to convey to other people as well. That is, the continual cycle. It's the spiral of evolution in which we face a lot of similar things at a higher level. We can bypass one thing, but we can come back to it at another level because there's more to be taught there. Just the way that we culturally, the same thing happens. We have spiral evolution culturally, evolutionarily. It's many people feel Atlantis, and the collapse of Atlantis is coming back now again for us to relive at a different level with different awareness as technology is taking over once again. And are we going to face it wisely? Are we going to face it with consciousness, or are we going to allow our darker impulses and our denial of God and elevating ourselves as gods instead to take over? So yeah.
So paradoxically, comfort can enslave us, right?
Totally, because comfort can, we can be in comfort and be conscious of comfort because we're consciously enjoying it. But comfort can go into patterns. So that means automated autopilot patterns. And as soon as we're doing that, we're more in the law, in the realm of the biological. And biological is the material. That means it just has cycles of perpetuating matter, right? And then if we're in that state, we don't have as much agency and sentience. We have sentience and agency when we're connected to the moment, to the greater mystery, and we're communicating, we're getting signals of what is real, what is next, what our path is. And there we can really clarify what our real desires are and what our path of action is, not coming from the wounds, right? But yeah, when we go into comfort, we're not challenging ourselves to overcome the next thing so that the consciousness can expand more and more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned also. He said many times, you can waste your life by living in comfort and dying in comfort. Right? With me, there is danger.
Yeah. Yeah. There's danger in comfort.
Yeah, that's exactly where his words. You can waste your life by living in comfort and dying comfortably. With me, there is danger. I've been contemplating on these words for many years. There's such a beautiful music. It's called "Men of No Ego," and he's also from Bulgaria, actually.
Really? I know that musician. I didn't know he's Bulgarian.
His name is Dimitri. Yeah.
Okay.
And I had a session with Mushroom once, and it was really a hardcore session, and I had to redirect my consciousness into something to catch like a break or breath, and the mushroom said, pick up your phone and send him an email and ask him if you can use his music within your projects. So I did it. It was kind of a challenge, because the mushroom, when you look on the phone, there's like 1,000,000 times more pixels than without the mushroom. And I sent him an email, and he responded within 10 minutes. The mushroom knew exactly.
Wow.
And I mentioned about what we do for consciousness, for humanity, and such a beautiful. You have my permission to use my music everywhere, and since then I'm promoting him as well. We even invited him to Poland we organize a festival over there. Such an amazing and beautiful and relaxing music, and one of the albums is with Osho wisdom. There's a lot of wisdom there between the music. Osho is saying some really strong messages, sending some strong messages to us.
Of course he does. Of course. Yeah, good man.
He was a very interesting persona, right? Very, very controversial.
Yeah, I like him. I like his path, and it's no easy task to be a person at that level when everyone's looking up to you for answers, and it seems like you're kind of there on your own, alone, and it's an interesting path. I definitely appreciate him.
I got another one of the last questions for you. It's a very strong question. You don't have to answer that. What was the darkest thought you ever had?
The darkest thought I've ever had. This is what brings me. I actually was going into this the other day, and I was feeling into. I don't know how to describe it, but I try to feel into, with my human mind, to understand existence. And because we think of temporal and spatial ways with our regular consciousness, I always think of what is outside of existence. But if there is something came from the void, and the void is nothing, I can't comprehend nothing. So I'm like, but there must be even something other than outside of the void. So the darkest thought that's brought me probably the most terror, and it's terror in very small seconds and then it disappears, is feeling into something that is not benign, that is behind the universe, behind the void, behind it all. And maybe it goes into, maybe it's me touching the void of nothingness. But even then, it's something I can't describe it. I'm just so the dark thought is really some sort of terror that comes at probably the non-existence of anything, and it's sort of I move through it very quick and then get out of it very quick because I can't comprehend it. And so this feels like probably a medicine journey. This feels like something that you'd experience with ego death and going into the void, you know, with LSD or psilocybin. But for me, it's just a journey of just sober contemplation. So yeah, I would say that is probably has brought me the most terror. My ego.
So non-existence would be the most terrifying, right, thing?
For now, yeah. Yeah.
And what is your view on death? Like, is death a process? How do you understand death today?
I don't really understand death very well. I'm not very well versed in death and dying. I am curious, you know, as more of esoteric knowledge and wisdom comes through of, you know, the path of the soul that the soul takes first through the moon and then through all the other planets before it exits this realm through the sun. I think there's some very interesting stuff there, just the way that it comes into existence through all those planets, and it's imprinted with various aspects because each planet has an energy, and you know that's why we used to think of them as gods before. But death, I do definitely live with the assumption that reincarnation is a fact of reality. But yeah, I don't really have much to say about death. My relationship with death is not very mature.
Okay, so at the end, I would like to ask you, how do you see the future of consciousness, or your future as well? What are your dreams, plans for now?
Yeah, a future of consciousness. Well, I think it's going to keep expanding, contracting, contracting and expanding, and you know, going through all the iterations that life wants to go through and using us as its vessels. But for me, my hope is, you know, a victory in my life would be that I die with experiences of true heart opening and connection with other people, of true communion with other human beings, of really being present with the mystery of nature and the emergence of creation as it happens, and perhaps to have triumphed and being victorious over great challenges with a close group of people in my life. All those together would be a very fulfilling way to move out of this world, out of this lifetime.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Life is amazing, life is magical, and then let's dance this life beautifully. I think that you already won your life. Yeah. In Shadow for me is a beyond masterpiece. Is in top 10 creations of humanity I have ever seen and experienced, and I'm so grateful for this conversation with you. And can you tell our viewers and listeners where people can find you and how they can support you? You said that the new project is coming, right? And it will require a lot of resources.
Yeah. People, thank you for that. People can find me on at Lubomir Arsov on Twitter and on Instagram. Also, LubomirArsov.com is my website, which is some old work that people can look at. I don't think I have a donate page on my website, but under the videos of both Kingdom and In Shadow, people can donate in fiat, you know, regular dollar currency or Bitcoin. And yes, of course, that is all very well appreciated.
Well, yeah, so we encourage all people to support your beautiful work. We will place all the link in the description. And also, Lubomir, thank you so much. It was an honor and pleasure talking to you. You were on the very top of our global guest on our list. And we wish you, all the best with your work and with your personal life. And thank you once again for enormous amount of wisdom and beauty
Mm.
and sensitivity. I'm astonished. Thank you so much, Lubomir.
Thank you, Robert. It's been an honor. Really appreciate this conversation and the kind of the space we shared here. I'm very grateful.
Yeah, this was another Beyond the Courage podcast, and our guest today was an amazing artist and creator, Lubomir Arsov. And we invite you and we encourage you to interact with us in the comments. Please send us an info who would you like to see as a next guest on our podcast. That's it for now. Thank you. Have a beautiful day and magical life. Bye-bye.